it's just like this month. That's my target. Yeah. That's how I got off.
It started. It'll be 20 years old this April, and I started it after I'd been working on a contract basis with the Arts Council, doing some work in jazz development, and I worked for the Arts Council on a contract for 5 years previous to that. And then the contract came to an end 20 years ago, and I thought, well, I'm really enjoying working in music, and I'd done quite a lot of voluntary promotion and done quite a lot of promotion of events when I was with the Arts Council, and there seemed to be a gap in the market for promoting music that wasn't kind of in the mainstream. And I was particularly interested in jazz and improvised music at that time. I mean, I'm interested in all sorts of music that isn't necessarily mainstream music, I suppose, but I like mainstream too. But so I realised there was none of that happening. There was none of that kind of music really happening, and it wasn't well established like jazz or world music or improvised music or contemporary classical music. And I also thought that I might be able to raise funds to do that. I mean, it was a big risk. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had 2 very young children. Luckily, my wife had a reasonably good, steady job. So I set up an office in a small bedroom in my house, and that's how Moving On Music started, and started to apply for funds. Also, I was lucky enough to be able to bring some projects I've been working on in the Arts Council out of it. So that helped to pay a few bills. And also I got, at the time it was, LEDU was the sort of local enterprise development unit it was called, I think. And you were able to apply to them for startup fundings for small business. And you went along to some classes and about, doing cash flow charts and stuff like that, and you were also given a business mentor. And I'll never forget this, my meeting with my business mentor. When I told him what I was going to do, he turned around and he said to me, "You know something, it'd be far better opening a chip shop." But I didn't really like that idea much. I wasn't really into opening chip shops, so I stuck with the music. I guess the big thing that happened was the internet and computers. Just speed of communication. Everything's done by email these days, whereas before it was all paper and faxes and posts and things, and huge postage bills. What else has changed? Well, of course, the environment here has changed completely, because at that time when we started out, there wasn't the ceasefires, and of course there's lots more venues. I mean, at that time, for the kind of thing we were doing, there really was only the Crescent Arts Centre, sort of, and then some pubs. Now we've got all these splendid new venues, and places like the Limelight, which we have used in the past as well, and so that's changed. But I have to say, the funding situation hasn't really changed that much. Not really, because it's now in a situation where it's in crisis again, and that's very scary. I think it's scary. It's not just because it's scary for everybody, because if we haven't got things like the arts happening and the arts that are subsidised, then we don't really have a functioning society, to my mind. That it's always been very rocky. It's always been unstable. You've never known if you're going to be in business from one year to the next. That's a difficulty. It really is, because it kind of grinds you down a little. It has to be said. But on the other side of that, the joy in what I do is working with musicians, getting them on stages, maybe providing them some funds to write new music. Help them by putting on support slots and stuff like that. I mean, that's the joy. When you have a really, really good gig, when you take a bit of a risk, like a couple of years ago, first time bought Peter Broadsman here, you know, who's known as a legend of the saxophone and what used to be called the avant-garde. And it was really one of the most stunning gigs I've ever witnessed. My favourite show over the past 20 years. I mean, it's a very hard one to call, I have to say. I mean, the Peter Broadsman that I mentioned earlier with Paul Nilsson Love would come pretty close to the top, as would the Sun Ra Orchestra about 10 years ago with David Holmes. That was in the old art college. That was a great one. Working with Martin Hayes, Dennis Cowell, I really enjoyed their shows. Last year we did a show in our jazz festival, the Brilliant Corners Jazz Festival. It's just coming up again now. We did a kind of a strange double bill with Paul Dunmore, saxophone player who I also mentioned earlier, and Tony Bianco doing their tribute to John Coltrane. But we paired it with the singer from the northeast of England called Richard Dawson. He's kind of unclassifiable. Some people try and put him into a sort of folk bracket, but he's not really. He's just a sort of one of these really outsider kind of people who writes great songs and plays very, very interesting guitar. That was a definite highlight from the recent past. Jack Quartet, one of the most up and coming string quartets in the world from New York. We've had them a couple of times, and the first show they did for us was in here in the Mac. It was the first music event that happened in here, and they premiered a work by a guy we've worked a lot with. I'd like to mention because he passed away a couple of months ago. He was called Peter Rosser, and he wrote a string quartet for that event, and it really was a great event, and his work was great as well. And we'd hoped to work with Peter again, but alas, that's not going to happen. But we will work with the Jack again, I hope. Although they're becoming quite big, maybe too big for us, but we'll have to see. Oh, hairy moments. Yeah, certainly have. One of the legendary gigs, I suppose, in moving on music and Belfast history was the time that we booked John Fahey, the guitar player, to play here. He was on a very rare tour, and unfortunately John wasn't in the best of health at the time, let's say. And it proved an extraordinarily difficult gig because other gigs prior to our show had been cancelled. He had done something for the Andy Kershaw show which they didn't use, and we were getting all kinds of messages before John arrived. And he arrived here in a singlet and a pair of shorts, and that's all he had. And it was a very, very bizarre evening. And I'd booked Henry McCulloch, the great Henry McCulloch, to do support. It was in the Elmwood Hall, and only about 50 people turned up, maybe even less. But John was in a very strange frame of mind. And there was all sorts of lawyers and people like that supposed to be arriving to take everybody to the cleaners, and it was all a very, very, very bizarre event. We haven't had that many cancellations over the years. I mean, there was one that happened a long time ago. It was quite an interesting one. It was a guy from Macedonia called Feris Mustafov, but his whole tour was cancelled because he couldn't get from where he was in Macedonia to Belgrade to get a visa. And it was all very last minute, and we just had it. I mean, the whole tour was cancelled, but it was all happened very last minute because nobody even knew if you could get out of the country. That's whenever the Yugoslavian war was going on. And we've had a few artists. I mean, there was one artist who remained nameless. He was a drummer with a band from America. He didn't seem to want to leave his hotel. Whenever I went to find him, he was sitting. The gig was in the Crescent Arts Centre, and he was sitting with with a big pair of headphones in the bar of Madison's, going Jack a can, and that's all. And then so I said, well, you're going to have to come round to the Crescent and play some drums, and he didn't really seem to think that was a very good idea, but he did anyway. Well, this is a project we started, this will be 3 years ago now, and it's like something I thought I'd never really do, and that was to have a jazz festival in Belfast. But we've been doing a lot of sort of one-off gigs with, jazz and improvised music over the years, and we thought it would be a good idea to try and sort of cluster events into a sort of mini festival. It ranges from stuff that is pretty, what one might call mainstream, through to your Richard Dawson's, through to this year we have Fred Frith playing, who's a legendary guitar player. He's now an academic. He formed a band way back in the 60s called Henry Cow, who were very influential, I suppose you could call them prog rock band or post-rock band. So it happens at the last weekend of March every year so far, and this year it's from it's from the 25th to the 28th. So it's a kind of an experiment to see if we can build an audience for something that is perceived to be a music that isn't that popular. But it's interesting to see that there is a kind of a core audience there that can support something like this, and people seem to really enjoy it, and the feedback we've had has been nothing but positive, both from the public and the local musicians. We want to keep developing what we do, and all things being well, and we continue to get funding, the company hopefully will be able to expand a little, just by the fact that we're working off a new strategy that will hopefully bring new efficiencies and to what we do, so that we can sort of do more of it, if that makes any sense at all. We're very busy. We're covering, at the moment, we're covering around about 80 dates per year in events and tours and workshops and stuff like that. That's, if we get the funding that we hope we'll get, that could rise to probably 120 events per year, which is a lot of work for a very, very small team of people. There's only 3 of us sort of really in the company, and this 4th person who comes in and does the finances, which is extremely valuable. So we're just a very small team. So I think it's trying to just build on what we've done in the past, but maybe perhaps do it in a slightly different way, working from this new strategy which is called Music with an Edge. So it's endless in some ways. I mean, we've got the ideas, but we need, to execute these ideas and be able to get, really good music to the whole of the North. We need the support of our local politicians and those who are, in control of the budgets, because it's just really important that there are more cuts are not implied, because there's very little money to go around anyway in the first place. But now we're really are staring into some sort of abyss here, and it's not going to serve anybody's purposes. It's not going to serve education. It's not going to serve people who want to, develop careers. It's not going to serve people like you who are trying to write a magazine and sell it, and and become part of a strong cultural, vibrant place. It's a real retrogressive step what's being reported to, but maybe it won't happen. But it is going. It's on the slide, but that slide needs to stop, and we need to start building again, because it's such an important aspect of living in a place, having good culture and good music and poetry and all kinds of arts to attend and support. and also it keeps people here. You know, there's a huge brain drain from this place. But I think activities like we're involved in, us, that meaning you and me, they're really important to keep, you know, to keep young people here, I think. So, I mean, we're always facing these difficulties. Hopefully we'll continue to come through and just do stuff better.